Hey, welcome to the podcast. I'm Paul Monahan, and my mission is to help you play better, struggle less, and enjoy more. And we've got a great show today, a really terrific high-energy guest, and I can't wait to dive into the conversation. But first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about our guest. Our guest is Kim Franca, and Kim has had an extremely successful career in music. Now, Kim was initially a singer and a performer, is now a vocal coach and producer. But Kim's not just a vocal coach. She does far more than that for her clients. She helps them to find their voice both literally and figuratively. And what I have found working with Kim a little bit is that she inspires their powerful personas to emerge, and she helps them to perform at their best when it means the most. She's based in Nashville, Tennessee, and so many of her clients are in the country music space. And that said, I've worked personally with Kim and found her approach to be deep and profound, and one that has changed me as a person, as a coach, and maybe even as a podcaster. So I'm delighted to have Kim on the show with us today. Kim, great to see you again.
Oh, nice to see you. Thanks for the beautiful introduction.
Of course. No, it's heartfelt. I've just enjoyed working with you so much. I'm just like, wow, the people that I know out there who are listening to all of this performance discussion, this discussion about the inner game, the game played up here, they have to spend time with you. It's just an absolute imperative. So I'm super excited. Right? Yep, absolutely. So I'd like to start and just get a sense for, your own musical performance journey. Tell me a little bit about what that was like. And I think I'm really interested to understand, like, when you found your voice.
Okay. Well, probably it begins really early in my childhood that my father was kind of a fanatic of the voice and in love with singers and singing. So from the earliest memory I have, maybe 5 years old, music would be blaring on these speakers outside in our big backyard or in the house, and he was always playing music. He loved opera. He loved old movies like Mario Lanza and Judy Garland and all of and musicals. But he was fascinated by opera. So he would constantly be playing music and like sort of yelling at me like, come over here, sit down. This is a miracle. You've got to hear Madame Butterfly, or you've got to hear this voice or that voice. And so just, I was so young when that experience started happening. And I was in love with singing just my whole life. I don't remember not being in love with singers. And I was mesmerized by every record that he was playing and every emotion that I felt. And something just changed in me. Like I fell in love and thought, this is the most magical, wonderful thing I've heard humans do.
Oh my goodness,
my brothers play a lot of sports. I like sports. I like other things in life, but I loved it. So I really resonated with my father like that. And then I started singing. I think I noticed in elementary school, we would go to music class and start singing. And I thought, wow, I feel free. I feel uninhibited. I love this. So I started singing and auditioning for the little talent show in elementary school and then junior high, and being chosen to get this lead part or to do this or to do that. And so I started performing, but I've always loved it. I've loved all kinds of singing too.
Wow. What was your dad a singer?
Yes. So he sang a little bit like semi-professionally. He did musicals, maybe in his 20s and 30s, and he did some shows, and he used to go and tell me he'd sing piano bar and go out and sing, but he was never like a professional, but he had a beautiful voice. He did. I think if he would have studied more, there was more he may have done with it, but he became a father and was working, but he always loved it. He always loved singing and loved the experiences that he had performing, the ones that he did have.
Yeah, I'm certainly thinking about this idea of modeling, and it's something that great performers often have this somewhere in their past, this modeling that happened in their life, right? This somebody who was very influential for them did this thing, and that became the
Oh,
model for their career, or for them, well, for their passion for it, whatever the performance domain is, right? Um, so he could sing. Was he singing all the time, or was he?
yeah, he would sing around the house, but he studied it. I think it's
Oh,
it's
okay.
funny that I didn't set out in my life to become a vocal coach, but I ended up doing it. But when you look back, you said something interesting that a lot of times people have early experiences that shape them. And really, when I've turned around to look at how I've looked at singing, I've been analyzing singers and studying singers since I was 5 with my father. I would even fake that I was sick at night sometimes to get out of bed if I heard him listening to old shows on TV or singers. And I'd say, "Oh, I don't feel too good, Dad." And then I'd spend like 2 hours late at night and we would just analyze. And he would say, "Look at how he's holding his head. Look at how free. There's nothing holding him back. Look at Mario Lanza. He's completely uninhibited." And my dad would be crying. Like he would have tears in his eyes at 10 o'clock at night as we were analyzing. I mean, I might have been 10. I might have been 14 years old. So I was always watching why and how these singers were making the sound and how they were standing. And and then my mother loved country music. So by the way, that was a whole other thing.
Mm.
I also listened to a lot of other genres, but with my dad, I would just he's the one I would mostly be analyzing with. So I think, wow, I've always loved music and singing, but I've always analyzed it and been fascinated as to how an opera singer stands and makes these sounds. It's a miracle. Like my father would say, "Isn't this a miracle that a human being can make sounds like this and sustain this level of emotion and we would and then if we watched it on TV, we'd be talking about the costumes and the acting um so it was just like really loving the effect that singers had on us. I think he loved the effect it had on him, and so did I. The emotions and then the storytelling. I think I was amazed that humans could write words and tell a story in 3 minutes that might have been about somebody's entire life. So it was songwriting and singing from such an early age that I was fascinated with.
Oh, that's so interesting. I love that. What? So now you're growing into your teens, and you're getting
Yeah.
opportunities to
Mhm.
do talent shows, maybe even more than talent shows, right? Maybe the high school musicals. I mean, did you do that stuff as well?
Right. So right away in high school, it began junior high school, probably performing and being in this show and then getting leads in the musicals in high school. And then right
Yeah.
away, I lived in Detroit. So I grew up. So guess what? I grew up. So I'm hearing country from my mother's side all weekend when she was a teacher. So when she was in the house on the weekends, it was all the greatest country singers. My father played me, what I said, opera and all these other, but I grew up in Detroit. So as a teenager, I would think I was very influenced by soul and
Mm.
Motown. And when I was singing in bands, going out and auditioning to sing in an event band or something, there was a lot of soulful music,
Who did
being
you
so.
want to? Who did you want to be? You know what I mean? Every teenager wants to be this singer or that. Like, did you have somebody in mind?
That's interesting. You know what? Well, I'll tell you. From the time I was very young, I heard this out of my father's mouth. None of these singers are trying to imitate anyone or be anything that they're not. They're all authentic and unique and just completely expressing the emotions and their voice the way that's authentic to them. So he kind of always said this thing like, don't impersonate people, don't try to be somebody else, just be honest emotionally and sing that way. So it's funny that you just asked me that question. I'm having a flashback of his voice in my head. So I don't think I ever thought I want to sing just like someone. I
Hmm.
just wanted to be unbridled. I just wanted to take a breath and exhale, like inhale life, exhale a song. That's now catchphrase for my teaching. I just wanted the feeling of exhaling the emotions, whether it was pain or joy or anything I was feeling. I just wanted that to come out, and I wanted to tell the story. I thought
Wow.
songs were so fascinating. I wanted to honor the song and tell that story. And then whatever I was, I was. But I wanted to be honest because I felt like the singers that I heard, like, were so honest. When my mom played George Jones or Tanya Tucker as a little girl, I would have
Hmm.
tears in my eyes thinking, how does she sing? I mean, I could get emotional now. Like, wow. I mean, I had experience. It was so emotional for me. Yes, hearing
Yeah.
singing, it changed me. It resonated, and just my whole body felt something. I felt my heart opened up wide. I felt like there was so much compassion and love in these stories of life. It was like our music's like the landscape for life.
Inhale, inhale a breath and exhale life.
No,
Come on.
inhale life,
Oh, sorry.
exhale.
Inhale life,
The
exhale
more,
a song. I'm gonna.
yeah. So as I've taught, I thought, I've stared at so many people for so many years singing. And I thought, what are they doing? They've inhaled life and they're exhaling a song. And whatever they've gone through, whatever hardships you've gone through, whatever great things you've gone through, I think singing is this energy of everything you've gone through in your life. So is public speaking or being a preacher or a motivational teacher. I mean, anybody. I mean, by the way, I was always in love with anything. My dad brought home Zig Ziglar motivational tapes because he was a salesman and I was a little girl, and I was the only one in the house that wanted to listen to them with my father obsessively because it was the voice and the message, sort of like singing. It was somebody teaching something so that was so important and so helpful to your life.
I
So,
cannot tell you how, yeah, that's so interesting, Kim. And like, I cannot tell you how compelled I am this moment to channel my own inner Zig Ziglar and roll into some of my most favorite Zig Ziglar quotes. That is incredible. That's so funny. I actually met him a couple times.
you did?
I did. I met
He
him
was one of
at,
the original, right?
he
Like,
was, well, yeah, right. It was Earl Nightingale was kind of like, if you go in the way, way back machine, right? He was almost like the tent revival guy, but not religious. That was
mhm,
Earl Nightingale, right? I mean, you can go back to Dale Carnegie. We won't go that far back, but let's say the 60s and 70s, right?
mhm.
Yeah, so it's Earl Nightingale. And then you had this cadre like the Zig Ziglars, right? And then they were in the 70s and then the 80s. They were making cassette tapes,
Yeah.
right? And they were selling their right. And yeah, we used to have I had a cassette tape, and Paul and I would put the kids in the car and to go visit her folks an hour or so away.
Mhm.
And I would put the Zig Ziglar cassette tape in, and our
Oh my
kids would be listening to Zig Ziglar as, 2-year-olds.
See,
So
this is funny. We've never talked about Zig Ziglar together.
I know.
It just
Yeah.
that moment just came up when I was just thinking about,
Zig
something that
Ziglar.
had a huge effect on me. I just, listened to that. So you have also, oh my
I
gosh.
know. Can I share with you? I want to share with you my absolute favorite Zig Ziglar quote. And I use this all the time for the people that
Please.
know me and hang out with me or whatever. I've heard some of my work. They know I say this all the time. I teach this, but you can have anything in your life that you want just so long as you help enough other people get what
Mm.
they want.
Yeah, it's
Come on, right? I mean,
it's very, very beautiful. That quote. Very, very beautiful.
and here's a guy that absolutely lived what he said. And I'll give you this example. So I met him at a stage performance would have been about let me see here, time frame would have been about 1991, 1992, something like that. And I got to shake his hand, say hello. A lot of people did, probably bought his book, whatever. And about 10 years later, about 10 years later, I bumped into him at Dallas Fort Worth Airport. He was sitting alone in a gate area. And I'm like,
And you just
he's
have,
sitting alone. No one's chatting with this guy. I'm like, I'm going in, right? I walk up, Kim, and I put my hand out and introduce myself. And he's like, well, now, hey, Paul, how would you like to sit down? Let's sit down and chat a little bit.
your heart just started pounding.
I'm like, all right, I'm in with Zig. He's like, now, tell me a little bit about yourself. Now,
Are you?
he's sitting there, yeah, and I'm like, well, what are you up to, Zig? He's like, well, I'm editing. At the time, he was editing the 25th anniversary edition of See You at the Top, which was like his seminal, work in sales. Anyway, I could go on about that. He was the nicest guy. Spent probably 30 minutes chatting with him. And
Oh
he's got a little yogurt. He's like, at that time, he's maybe, 65, 70. He's eating a little yogurt before he gets on the flight or whatever. And he just was the nicest guy.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And see, that's so interesting. And it's funny. He said, sit down and let's talk. Like that's what he does for a living is he talks
Mm-hmm.
to awaken people and to help them and to teach them. And then the very first word he says to you is, well, sit down and let's talk.
Yeah.
I can just
Yeah.
see it. And even you must have thought, oh,
Yeah.
wow.
It was great.
And to thank
So,
him. I'm sure you wanted to thank him too. I always felt, when you hear someone like that, or I hear great singers, this voice comes over me. Thank you. Thank you for being
mm,
so brave as to put that sound out in the world or to put these motivational tapes out into the world. Like I was always so grateful for the teaching of motivational teachers or anybody I would hear that
mm-hmm.
was out there speaking and doing things. And I just respected what the work that it went into, the work that went into getting to that point or to crafting that message and working on their voice enough to get to the point where they could put out tapes or these singers are making albums. So you just
No
feel
doubt.
grateful so much. And when you said that quote by him that you're going to get what you want as long as you're helping people, I think that's the number one motivating factor I had when somebody asked me to start coaching, maybe 24 years ago now, was I wanted to help free people. If I could make people feel unbridled and free and express themselves,
Mm,
maybe introduce them to singers they had never heard or speakers or different people, then that would be the greatest thing ever. I was so motivated to just help other people. I think that's how I just kept coaching all these years was loving watching people grow, fall more in love with singing and like their own voice more, and fall in love with the process of expression without as much fear or without um, feeling uncomfortable, just free to speak their mind in their daily life and on a stage or wherever they were.
mm. Yeah. What is it that there's a bunch of things that are emerging for me here in our conversation, Kim. If you think back to some of your early performances, and then I want to hear more about as you evolved into a professional performer. I want to hear about that. But I'm curious, like, so I think in terms of, and I often talk to my clients in terms of, what I try and do is help people to play better, whatever the domain,
Hmm.
struggle less, and enjoy more.
Hmm.
And I feel like if I can do that, I've made, we've made some progress. And so what is it that creates great performances?
I think that the more, so if you're on stage and you're going to sing a song, I think the more every single bit of your consciousness, your mind, your emotional state, and your focus is right in the moment of what you're doing. So it's focusing on each breath you're taking and then completely being in touch with every word you're speaking or singing. If you're introducing a song or you're singing a song, or even if you're acting, and emotional connection. I think that as far as just singing in particular, I think that you have to feel and be, I tell feel what you're singing. But something else I do is each song is a video. So every song takes place in a particular place. There are certain people you're singing to, or there are people in the video. And I feel like to not get distracted with who's out in the audience or what a big performance it is, or maybe the stakes are really high, a record label's coming to see this singer. So, and the self-talk in their mind is, oh my gosh, if I don't do great right now, my life's over. This is what's going to happen. Or, oh no, all of my family flew in from across the country to see me right now. Whatever it is, how do
Right.
we turn all that off? Because that stuff out there, that distraction, puts you in your left brain, starts to put you in a fight or flight, a more anxious state. Your heart starts racing. Your breathing is more shallow, so the tone of your voice isn't as good. And the mental focus of the song that you're singing into that microphone starts to be scattered by all this outer stuff or the stuff in the head.
Mm-hmm.
How can you really feel the melody and every word if you're getting into fight or flight from what's going on in your head or a distraction or the fear? So I think when we see people that just look like they are in, and I call it the zone, you know what I mean? We
Yep.
want to watch performers
Mm-hmm.
that are completely one with what they're doing and they're in another world, as you say, or wow, they're in the zone, or they're completely feeling and delivering each word and telling the story as if no one's listening, you
Yep.
know? I think we love that about performers. And I think that's kind of what you're aiming at. So, we talk about great, but it's not always so easy. How do you stay there, right? That's what our conversations, are about when we're,
Yeah, that's I think there's definitely the technical aspect that allows us to perform whatever domain we are in. There's the technical piece of it that we work on all the time, right?
yeah,
And then I think there's this symbiosis between the inside game and the outside game. Like you have to work on the outside game for sure. Like you have to
mhm,
have the skills. Like skills matter and you should spend time on them, right?
yes,
The inside game that's part of this, it supports the whole enterprise, if you will, right? I
mhm,
think it supports the whole performance. And I love what you said about being able to turn off the distractions. Like, who's out in the audience right now? And what are they going to say about me? How are they going to judge me?
exactly.
And we do this thing where we go way out in the future and we paint this story that it doesn't even exist. We're just inventing it. Oh, then I'll lose my chance if I don't do this or whatever, right?
hmm And that applies. It can be for you out on the golf course. Oh, all my friends are here today watching me, or I have to qualify today to get into this place. Or, if you're whatever it is, an actor, singer, an athlete, I think it's all the same. And I think it's when we make the stakes really high, when the story that we're
Hmm.
telling ourselves about the importance about this game or this golf game or this one performance, if the volume's up really, really high, anywhere close to the performance, wow, that's not great because the chance of that taking you over is really high. I think you can deal
Hmm.
with that the week before the game or the performance. You should deal with all of those voices and thoughts that you have way before. You should deal, and something about
Yep.
the inner game, the headspace. I think something that we do is we work hard, like you said, on preparation. So the outer games out here, that's
Hmm.
eating right and sleeping and preparing and singing your songs over and over until you know every note, until you've performed them, you've memorized the lyrics, you're ready for the show, you practice with the band. So let's say all of that's perfect and you've performed it to perfection 2 days before the show. You know you can do it, everybody knows you can do it, but can can you perform under pressure? Because every performance is
Yep.
pressure. Every
Hmm.
basketball game, every golf game, every time you're on a stage, there's pressure, right? Because you want to perform well. So if you're prepared, if the outer stuff is already done, it's always the head game that changes, that makes people crack under pressure or perform at a level that's less than their ability. They get off the stage and say, wow, that's not as well as that. I didn't sing as well as I could, or I was just flat, or my energy wasn't there. What was happening? What zapped their energy? What made them mentally distracted? And what
Hmm.
affected them physically was the story that seeped in, or the distraction, or that the speaker went out for a second, or the doubt. I think it's doubt. Can I do it as well right now in this big performance as I did with the band the last 3 days? I did it perfect then, but now the record label's there. So and so is here. The stakes are really high. Can I do it? I think that's the question that every athlete and every performer asks as they're walking on stage and showtime's about to happen. The doubt sets in, and there's one big question: can I perform under pressure right now? If I don't, I'm going to die. If I don't, my chances are over. This guy's never coming to hear me sing again. Or these golf buddies that I've been telling I'm doing great to all week,
Yes.
they're never going to want to golf with me again. Isn't that it?
That is huge. The concept of doubt. I will say this. One of the things you really helped me, and I don't know if I told you this, but in working with you, I think one of the most brilliant things you do is, among many things, is that you distill the performance down to pattern recognition. Like, I think pattern recognition, correct me if I'm wrong, Kim, that's a big thing in your world, right? And your
Yes.
approach.
Yes.
And I've really, it's caused me to look at my approach and to develop
Mhm.
some models that I think can help my clients around this idea of pattern recognition.
Mhm.
And so, interestingly, one of the biggest elements, I believe, in for my clients in the performance domain, it could be in the golf space,
Mhm.
could be in a corporate setting, right?
Mhm.
I think in terms of 5 patterns that you want to be aware of, right?
Mhm.
I don't think I've shared this with you yet. I'll share this
Okay,
with
yeah,
you.
I
I'll
want
shoot this to you.
to.
So, it's I might be able to bring this up here too. Hold on one second.
Okay.
So let
Okay.
me bring this up on the screen so you can see it. If you're listening, you won't see this, but if you're watching at home, you should be able to see this, right? So,
Nice.
um, so I call this the 5 heroes of potential. And these are basically thought patterns that are part of
Okay.
our experience, right? And
Mhm.
so on the right-hand side, and I guess I'll go there first. On the right-hand side, you can see that there's the ones that we have to be concerned about are fear, frustration, doubt, shame, and quit.
Hmm. Okay.
And you just mentioned doubt as like one of the huge ones. Well, what overcomes doubt? Well, commitment to the process, right?
Mhm.
Um, and love overcomes fear, acceptance overcomes frustration,
Hmm.
vulnerability overcomes shame, and perseverance overcomes quit. So I think one of the things that you've really helped me to quantify is this pattern recognition that can be so important in performance, because it helps one to move to become aware of a thought pattern that's not productive,
Right.
And number two, be able to do something with it if you feel the need to or feel the desire to shift from this thought pattern that's not productive for you to one that
Mhm.
is. So like what would be like, all right, how does somebody deal with their doubt?
Okay. So first, and by the way, as I was looking at your chart, that's beautiful. It's so helpful. And by the way, all of this, I think it's great to write it down, whether you're a speaker, an athlete, to write down, like you said, what do I notice about myself over the last 6 months? The times where I lose it, or I get off in my game, or I hit a wrong note, or I get scared on stage, this was the voice that came in, or this was the doubt that ended up making me really afraid. Because I think we start doubting, and then the emotion is fear, that we start feeling afraid. Fear
Mm,
is your heart's racing, your hands are sweating, and your breathing is short, and it affects your athletic performance or your voice, right? So look at when you said patterns, it's what is a repetitive thought or behavior that we do. If we accept it, like you said in your chart, if we accept that behavior without shame and we love ourselves, then we can heal it. Then we can fix it. We can go to a coach and find someone to help us. I think the biggest reason, it took me years to learn this, that why singers would avoid like a negative pattern that they had in their singing, or you could listen to the recording and hear that this was going wrong. Oh, I ask people over and over, like, why haven't you addressed this? Or let's jump right in. And they said, I didn't have anyone around me that could help me. So I just kept thinking someday I'd fix it. And I almost just ignored it and kept focusing on what I was doing well, because
mm,
I was so afraid I couldn't fix this about myself. And that meant that I would never be a really good singer. If I look at my weaknesses, it means I'm not special. I wasn't gifted enough, or I might not make it. This was like the psychology that I think I found in people. And so I would always start lessons saying, if I could solve every one of your problems and answer every question you have about the things that are difficult, how to hit that note, how to breathe here and do that, what would you ask of me? Like, how would you talk to me? And that started changing people when they believed they could fix the negative things and accept them and not be judged by me or told, like, oh, that means you're never going to be that good. If you have this problem or your pitch is bad there, you'll never fix it. When they could trust me and have a safe space, they would fix them so quickly. I would just say, "Oh, right here, you're just biting down on that word. Open it up." Or "That's a closed vowel that needs to be open." Or "Do you realize you haven't breathed in 3 lines?" And it just fixed things and fixed things. So acceptance of the patterns that are working against you is the
mm.
first step. And then being brave enough to say, "How do I solve these and what do I do?" And then do the work to solve them. You know, that's
Bravery is an interesting word. Say more about how bravery shows up in somebody who's really working toward better and better performances.
Well, I think that all the preparation makes you brave, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I said is what eliminates fear and doubt a lot is extreme, precise preparation. Like going over, like and I did a lot of preparation for the recording studio. That ended up being something I found I was helpful and good at with my students. I'm a vocal coach, and then I'd say, well, and then I started going to the studio with them. And what I found is the more extreme the preparation was, where we had worked on every single note, which ones they were going to punch in or do a certain way, how we were going to record the entire vocal. I tried to create the experience of being in the recording studio as much as possible so that when we finally made it in there, it was just making it happen, but there was no surprises. There was nothing that was going to come up. Everything had already been worked on. And then, they'd come to my house 2 hours before the recording session and warm up. The day of a recording session, I'd say, Don't get on the phone with friends or doctors or people you're going to argue with. If you can stay in character of the song or two that you're going to record that day, try to feel the emotions of the song, listen to the track, make the whole day about the video, like you're in the video of that performance that day. If you have the time in your life and you can make it that important, and emotionally and mentally and physically be that ready and warm up for an hour before you even go to the studio. So when you get to the studio, you're already completely in the zone of the song and feeling it emotionally and warmed up physically, and that your head is not distracted by the world. But all it's thinking about is as if that story just happened to you 5 minutes ago. And that when you get on the microphone to sing it, you're completely delivering that song and emotionally and physically and mentally 100% present. And then I would find that, like, wow, the recording that we did today on this girl compared to 4 months ago is shocking, the difference. Like how much better it is that she actually loved herself enough and believed in herself as an artist enough to take a whole day and make it matter instead of just running to the studio late and hoping it happens and warming up a little a couple days before. If you really, really,
Hmm.
and if an athlete can do the same thing on the day of like the biggest game or something so important, or devote a few hours to getting in the headspace and warming up, and before you even walk out there, it helps so much.
It reminds me of this idea that we like performances can be given by us or they can come through us.
Oh, say that again. I like that.
Yeah,
They,
I believe it's yeah, and I believe it's I'm trying to remember the source, but essentially this idea that yeah, we can a performance can be delivered by us,
yeah.
meaning like um, and it could be a good performance,
Kind of
but
like you're on autopilot, or you're
well,
just
you know, typically when we say, so the juxtaposition being it can be done by us or it can come through us. And the coming through us is like, let the energy of the universe and everything that we're passionate about being in character and being in the role. And as you say, playing out the movie that you've already imagined in your consciousness. When we do that, like that's amazing, amazing things
Mhm.
happen in our
And it works for
performances.
so if you're a motivational speaker, or you go and you teach and you get on stage, or if you're doing a
Hmm.
one-on-one coaching session, all of this applies. It's all the same thing. Is I think that quote that you just said is, if your mind is in what you're saying rather than what someone's thinking of you or distraction, and your emotions are feeling, even if it's teaching, if it's a one-on-one coaching session and you're feeling what you're saying, the emotion behind it, and your mind is really on teaching, and all of that's lined up, the whole message is like one, right? And that's what I think creates it coming through us rather than just from us, sort of on autopilot, or we've memorized this and we're saying it kind of, just where there's not a lot of emotion or connection from you.
But Kim, who am I? Why should I believe that people would want to experience a big performance from me? It's just me. I'm not.
Okay,
Why would
what,
right?
say
Right?
that song's bigger than me. So I always thought that the song was bigger than me.
Oh.
And like, so on stage, or even if I'm teaching a voice lesson, I always, before somebody walked in, I thought, let me just be a vessel of the highest, clearest, most helpful information that that person needs today. Let me just mirror something that their soul knows they want. It's not about how I look today, or if I sound cool, or my ego, or what I think they think of me. And the more I would try to be that vessel, the more I would find that I would be able to read them and quickly assess this pattern that's happening in them and pay attention to them and help them more. So over all my years, that's the number one thing I've worked on. And then I think I always did that as a performer. Like when I did the national anthem at pro sports. Oh my gosh. I mean, I felt like this is a majorly important song to so many people. This is our national anthem. So it's not just about if I wore the right clothes or if people like me. I need to tell that story. I need to walk out and sing it with heart and soul and do a great job and hit the notes. And so everything I did to prepare for that, or even before I would walk out on a field, was I wanted the story to come through me and the meaning of those words, and hopefully then how they would land on people that had served in military, or this how we all feel about that song.
Mm.
That would be up to them to receive, but my job was to just deliver it and not make it about me.
Now
So
that's interesting because
that helped me stay
that's
focused. I sang
yeah.
every word for them. I sang it for everybody there at that football game or somebody else.
And you learn that from Zig Ziglar. You can have everything you want in your life so long as you give enough other people what they want. So it's
Yeah.
about serving others. The song is bigger than me.
And if you're a teacher, like let's say you're on stage and you're delivering motivational material to
Mm,
a corporate audience, one of the ways to turn down the distraction, or if we start to have doubt or we start to get um, have any emotion set in or anything, the head game. If the head
yeah,
game comes up, or you
I'll
see
call
people
that.
on the phone, or you're worried about
Yep,
what they're thinking, or is the boss liking this? He just walked out of the
yep.
room. Two people just got on their phone. What's going on? We're human and we see that. Whether you're a singer, you watch the audience, or whether you're a motivational person on stage, and you see it all, right? So the best thing to do is to not act like you're not going to be affected ever on stage. So I think recovery, this is
Mhm.
another whole concept, but the worst thing to do is to think that we can prepare on that outer layer so well that nothing can get in our head. We're never going to be distracted. I'm going to perform this whole 2 hour show without one glitch. I'm going to get on stage today and I'm never going to doubt myself. I don't think you should ever say that. I think you should prepare that it's coming. Every performance, there's going to be pressure, no matter what it is. And if we expect it and sort of greet it with a smile a little bit and almost know that there might, whether it lasts for a moment, whether we missed a breath in a song and we got off pitch a little and we know it, instead of resisting it and being so angry at ourselves that it happened because we prepared for months or weeks or
Mhm.
years, we should be great. If we were good enough, this mental stuff shouldn't be bothering us. And we just, boom, we fall apart in an instant. You keep going off pitch, or you get really nervous as you're speaking, your hands are sweating, and you're kind of going off the rails. That's when we resist something. When we resist that we're getting distracted or we have a little bit of a doubt set in. So, what if we decided we're never going to resist it again? And that even when we prepare to the highest levels, having a plan for recovery is probably the best way to go as an athlete or a performer or a
Mm.
speaker. And what that is to not resist it. And that when we feel the doubt or we feel it coming up and taking us over, or the speaker goes out, or two people get on their phone, what do we have to go back to get back to the zone? If it's an athlete, you might say to yourself, I'm going to watch the ball come off the paddle of the person over there and watch it hit mine and go back to focusing on the holes in the pickleball. I'm just going to watch the ball. And then the chatter goes away and you become present in the moment again. Golf, I'm just going to get my hands straight. I'm going to watch the ball. I'm going to go back. As a singer, what do you go back to? The breath. Go. How do you get back to the core and get in the zone? Because I think the head game is the core where we're doing great and we're in the zone and we're focused on the words and we're breathing and we're feeling it. And then the outer layer of the head game is the negative and the doubt. There's two layers to the head game, I think. And the one we want to stay in is when you're in the ball, you're watching only the ball and you don't see thousands of people around you. If you're throwing a football or if you're hitting a golf club, there might be 200 people around you on the golf course in this competition, and you don't see anything anymore other than your hands and the ball, and you can just almost feel your breath in rhythm with all of that. Like that's the space we want to stay and get back to. So
Mm.
expect the distraction and doubt or other outer external things might happen. Don't resist it. Sort of let it be and know that you can count on going back to focusing on something that brings you to the core, gets you back into the flow, turns down the fight or flight, the heart rate goes back down, and then you're in the zone again as an athlete or a speaker. And sometimes we have to adjust from those distractions to the zone several times in a performance or in a sport. Get your head in the game. You know, you hear coaches, get your
Yes.
game. And then all of a sudden, the basketball player or, the tennis player looks at the coach, kind of reboots, goes back and says, just watch the ball. And then they start playing great again, you
Yeah.
know? So,
Yeah, that's so good, Kim. There's so much there. I'm thinking of the work by a University of Chicago researcher named Sion Balak. And she wrote a book called Choke about, yeah, it's an amazing, it's a compilation of a lot of the research that she and others have done in the mental
this
game space.
how we feel,
And
choked.
yeah, she really breaks down pretty nicely this idea that when our prefrontal cortex, this analytical and thinking part of our brain, when it gets overactive, it
Yeah.
begins to invent all of these scenarios that cause us to go into this downward spiral. And that's where doubt comes in. That's where the ego steps in and tries to protect us from the judgment of others. Is all that story that goes on, right? And
Yes.
so what she and her team have, and a bunch of researchers have figured out, is that when we find ourselves in those moments, if, to your point, if we have a plan,
Yes.
we can bring in the tools that help us to refocus. Oh, I just need to focus on this little spot on the microphone. It reminds me of whatever. Or in golf, it's like, okay, I'm going to take one thought into the play box. I just want to stay balanced for this single shot. Let's see if I can do that
Hmm.
and not worry about anything else. So it's
Yeah.
those kinds of things, right?
That's interesting. So I haven't read her material. I don't know who she is, but
Yeah.
that's great. I would love to read that. And do they say, does she also have, what, does she also believe that you shouldn't ever think that preparation is going to eliminate it because we're human and it happens and externals come into play. And so she's saying create a plan have something to do or to say to yourself, a phrase or a couple words that tunes you back in to the zone and the core when the chatter starts or when you start to get nervous. Right. So she's saying it's called recovery, right? It's another layer of preparation. See, everybody thinks that we only need to eat right and sleep the night before on the outer layer and learn the songs, practice, or have everything perfect. But did we practice and prepare for the head game to start? Did we write it down? Did we write our patterns? Did we write what we're going to
Mm-hmm.
do if we start to get really nervous and we start to doubt ourselves? Or, you're right. I think, isn't that acceptance? And I think it's the most important. I think, and sometimes it takes so much effort to learn the songs or learn the speech or get ready for whatever sport we're doing that we didn't have time, so we think, to prepare for that head game. Or we the other thing I think, and this happens with singers a lot or entertainers, is because the world looks at like the greatest athletes and singers as they're so special. They're gifted. They got the
Yes.
magic dust. They were born with this talent.
Yes.
Say all the phrases. They've got the it factor. they're gifted, they're this. You know what? I think after over 20 years, 24 of coaching, that one thing has changed for me a lot, that it's not true. That if you go back to the documentaries on Tiger Woods or Adele or Dolly Parton and you look at their whole life, they do so much work and so much preparation, and they do prepare and they get ready. They they just put in so much more work than people say. They have the talent and they have the gift. But if we looked at Michael Jordan's documentary and looked at his work ethic, was he the guy shooting hoops somewhere for 2 more hours after practice in his backyard, and he did it his whole life, and you think, and then he'd walk out and people would say, oh, he's so gifted. Is he? Or did he put a lot more thinking and more work behind the scenes? He brought that together with the talent, and that he prepared. So I think it's both. I think that, but we're afraid.
Yeah.
So what young performers, especially if I work with kids, which I have a lot, and teens, 15, 16, 17, they think,
Mhm.
wow, if I can't just get up and do it all the time, or if I'm afraid on stage too much, or I doubt myself, it means I don't have the it factor. It means that I really wasn't born with what it takes. Or if I choke at this pickleball game, or this, if I've choked as a tennis player or a golfer over and over again, I'm never going to make it. I don't have what it takes. And you know what? I think I wouldn't jump to that so quickly. I would address what's going on in there. And if you prepared and planned and thought about that just as much, you might be amazed at how you can turn the volume down, and how quickly you sometimes can eliminate those when you don't feel like a victim to it, or someone that has to resist it, when you feel like someone that can solve it and dissolve it. And
So
then when it
good.
comes up, I have the power. You start to say to yourself as a singer and athlete, hey, it's gonna come up. I'm gonna have days, things are gonna happen all the time. I'm gonna be so afraid, I'm gonna be petrified before I get on that stage, on that athletic field. I'm gonna say, do I have it? Can I perform under pressure? Maybe 20 years into your career, can I still perform under pressure? I don't think it goes away. I think
That's so good. There's a pretty famous allegory in the golf world from a guy who played in the 1920s and even 30s, and his name's Walter Hagen. And he
mhm,
used to say, I've seen the quote slightly different written in different ways, but essentially it's this. He used to say, I'm going to hit 7 bad shots every single round. I just don't know when.
oh, and
So he's prepared
that's a
for
good point.
that, right?
He
He
prepared so that he
yeah,
wouldn't have a mental meltdown or get so mad at himself or
yeah,
beat himself up. He just said, "There's 1, there's 2," and then he probably kept playing through it and he stayed steady. He
there it
didn't
is.
get so angry or so upset, right?
Right. Yes. And then and I think to your point, when we don't get spun up and really uh, feeling the intensity of those moments when they arrive, we are able to do something productive and maybe recognize a pattern that we hadn't recognized before
Yes,
and say, oh, that's the thing. Okay, I can do something with that rather than I am never going to get this. I'm the
right.
worst golfer ever. I'm the worst singer ever. I'm not getting that record deal. Whatever
Mhm,
that might be, whatever that inside chatter or that inner chatter, as it gets spun up, it just doesn't have to.
mhm. No, and I think it's funny too that I like that you're bringing this up, that there's an emotional component and a mental one. And it's kind of like, which comes first? Is it that an old program or a doubt comes up? Wow, what if I don't hit this ball right? What if I don't hit it as hard as I have for a week? Or what if I
Mhm.
don't hit the high, you're singing a song and you know the high notes coming. Like, this is big with singers, that they're singing a verse, but they know in the chorus there's a lot of high notes. And in the back of their mind, am I going to hit these now? Am I going to hit these? And maybe they've hit them perfectly for weeks before, but all of a sudden, out of the blue, they say, I don't know what it was, Kim. I'm on the stage. I've done it my whole life. because everybody's watching and the stakes are so high, this little voice out of nowhere just comes up. So it's the intellectual or the left brain or the voice comes up, and then that seems to instantly cause the emotional reaction of fear or frustration or anger that the voice is even there. Why am I being afraid? I'm singing this verse perfectly. I just sang 4 songs beautifully. Why would I fear the big note? You're almost having a conversation in the middle of performing, sort of.
It's like
It's
an
kind
like an
of
out of body experience, right?
yes, and then yeah, and then because the and if the voice goes on longer, the emotions just get more intense. So the one thing I do say is the thought starts it, awakens the emotion, but we can change the thought and the emotion by getting back to breath. I think that we can't wish this away as much as we can breathe it away. Breathing, like diaphragmatic breathing,
Mm.
and taking a couple deep breaths, deeper breaths before those high notes, they do they do calm our body, and then they calm down that fight or flight and that busy brain, and they put you back into feeling, and then you can hit those notes. So maybe you have to breathe twice as deeply as you would normally because you feel that doubt setting in before the notes. And then the next song, you're fine and you're back to your regular breathing. And if it's a sports, if you're on the field, it's the same thing. I think breathing's super powerful for a golfer or a tennis player or anybody. Like if you feel like you're escalating emotionally and saying, wow, I'm doing terrible. Wow, why am I not doing well today? Gosh, I've got to come back. I just missed 3 shots. The only way I think to stop the chatter and to lower the heart rate and feel better is to breathe. Is
It's
to
that
take
it
some
yeah.
really deep diaphragmatic breaths and go back to saying things. I can watch the ball. I can focus on the next word. You have to have just one thing to say positive that dissolves the negativity. I can focus. I can hit this note. I can breathe deeper to hit that note. Just 1 or 2 phrases can dissolve that chatter and overpower that negativity if we don't feel like a victim to it, if we don't resist it, we don't feel like, now it's over for me. And like your guy that prepares for 7 shots, he never thinks it's over when they happen. He thinks he can sustain and keep playing better than ever because he already prepared to battle when that happens.
Yeah, he recognizes the variability inherent in the game and the variability inherent in the human playing
Nicely
the game.
stated. So nicely stated. Yes. Yes.
And I like this idea that the physical interrupter then is the reset for the nervous system that has spun us out of control a little bit.
Yes. Mhm. And believing that we can. I I think maybe as I think about it, I think that's something for years I really try not just to tell a student, but I try to get them to feel recovery. Even if it's at a practice and they're getting tired or they're getting frustrated, I think, okay, now's my shot. They're choking. This is like what could happen on stage. They're choking in this lesson. They're getting frustrated. How can I walk them into go back, say one positive thing, take a deep breath, focus just, are you in the video? Or did you lose sight of the video just now, even in our lesson? Like, how can I teach them and make
Mm.
them experience recovery? And I used to go to watch a lot of them perform, so I'd take notes. And if something happened, I'd immediately want to talk about that when they get off stage. Like, hey, when you got really nervous or you sort of blanked out or you didn't go for that note or, you did kind of crack or you went off, what were you thinking beforehand and what happened? And talk through what you could have said to yourself or what you could have done. But people have to believe in recovery. Let's just say that. I think that this is we aren't victims to it. We can turn it off. I think that's the message is that I've seen it in myself. It's a miracle how you can be going downhill and within a second of a few deep breaths and a thought that I can hit that note, I've done it 100 times. Just 1 or 2 things because you had prepared and you had something in there to meet it. You didn't meet that voice with, I'm so weak or I'm so terrible. Hey, I'm human and this is normal. And I'm going to come right back in about 2 seconds. If you see the chatter as not your enemy, but a part of you, you're human. This is
Hmm.
gonna happen, you know? Don't be so angry that it's happening or so feel so weak and frustrated. Sort of like making friends with it, like greet it with a smile.
100%. Yeah.
Really, you want to say that, like, oh yeah, I just lost. I've been playing pickleball. I'm a fanatic. Oh, I just lost the other day. I walked on. I lost the first 4 points. The guy gave me the dirtiest look. He wanted to kill me. He looked at me like, and he's like, oh,
Your
okay.
partner, you mean?
Wait, you
Your
talk about looks that could kill, and my heart started pounding. I thought, oh my gosh, what if I keep playing terrible the whole game? I wanted to impress these guys. They're the really good guys in the gym. They asked me to come over and play. I just lost 4 points. And from then on, I just said, I can watch the ball. I can just keep my eye on the ball. Like I did what we're talking about. And I went right back to it. At first I thought I can't recover. I don't know what I'm going to do. And then I just started saying that mantra. I can watch the ball come off the paddle. I can get the ball over the net. I played great after that. And I just went back to one thing. I started breathing deeper. I slowed down the game. And I said, I'm not going to choke. I'm not going to cave from this. I'm going to apply what I teach. I'm going to apply what I've had to do in singing. And I love it. I just, and I thought, wow. And later I thought, I recovered really quickly because I used a tool. I'm going to do it tomorrow when I choke again or when my first serve goes out and I think
Mhm.
I hit 30 minutes of serves perfectly an hour ago as I was warming up, and how did I just miss my first serve when these really good guys asked me to play? I felt totally embarrassed, like how did I miss that serve? And then I thought, and then I went right back to it's okay. You've served 100 times before. You can do this. And I made every serve after that. You have to have something you can say to yourself. I've done this before. I'm going to do it again. Or I'm just going to drop the ball and watch my paddle push it over to exactly where it's going to go. Just a phrase, just something small to get back into the zone. Stop making the stakes high that these guys are really great players or
Yeah.
now they don't want to play with you because you just lost 3 points. I had to turn down that chatter, take away the story I was telling myself, go back to focusing on one thing, and it worked. Like
That
it
is
has worked on
amazing.
stage and like it works. So then I thought, okay, gosh, I'm gonna really work on this recovery and focus. So when I'm really tired out there, I don't just fall apart. Or when I'm playing people really great and I want to play well, I'm not gonna get into that outer chatter. I'm gonna stay the same whether I play with beginners or advanced players. I'm gonna stay the same whether I'm really tired or I have a load of energy. I'm just going to become the game and watch the paddle and think about the strategy to where I'm not paying attention to anything else in the gym or anybody else. I just see paddles and balls. So then I play the best I've ever played. So,
This is crazy. I'm going insane over here. The recovery, I mean, this is just awesome. It is possible. Sometimes I like to say the cave gets kind of dark sometimes when we get in our head and it's like, I am never going to be able to do this. But getting back to some very simple fundamentals, what can you do? Well, I can watch the ball hit the paddle.
yes.
Okay, what's great? So in your performance domain, what's the corollary? Oh, I can watch the golf ball, or I can, whatever it is,
With golf,
I can
maybe
hold this microphone high,
yeah, like maybe you're just
whatever
gonna
it
hold
is.
your club and focus on squeezing the club as you walk like 5 steps. Do something like put your hand on your leg and pay attention to that. Just it's kind of like I don't want to say it's taking energy to block everything out because then that takes a form of resistance and energy. I always say go into something. So I don't want to block out that it's the players or that I'm where I
Hmm.
am. I want to go into what I want to focus on rather than giving energy to what I don't want. So even if you're getting nervous on
Nice.
the golf course and you're not hitting, maybe stand there and squeeze your hands a couple times, move them a couple times, take in a couple extra seconds to just focus on it, like put all of your mind onto your thumb or something like that. Look at the ball even more intense. See the dots on the ball. I'm going to look at the blade of grass around the ball. Just something that you actually, it's very present, it's very tactile, and you just focus the brain and take a breath and say, I've hit this ball so well so many times. I've done this over and over. And just that moment of positivity or not feeling like you're caving or choking gets you back to the athlete in the zone. And then people go away, but you weren't focusing on pushing them away and blocking it. You were focusing on a positive command about what's going to be helpful. And it
Yeah.
just sort of was
Yeah.
tactile. Maybe in pickleball, I'm going to squeeze the paddle, and I'm going to just touch the paddle, and I'm going to toss it in my hands as I walk back to get ready for serve. I'm going to do some tactile physical gesture with a positive statement. I've hit 100 great serves this morning already. I can do this, or I'm going to watch the ball. It's not even hyping yourself up. Sometimes even the hype is not even as good as the exact command. I can watch the ball because I can. I can take a breath because I can
Mm.
before I sing it. It's even better than saying, I'm going to sound beautiful or I'm going to hit the best shot of my life. All that
Mm.
hype might be just getting in the way. Go back to what you can do. I can hold the paddle and watch it hit the ball. Almost 99% of the time, you will get it over if you watch it hit your paddle. If you take a deep enough breath, you will sing in pitch. If you know what I mean? Like there's a few commands that become so specific.
Kim, you may be surprised to hear this, but there's a guy who wrote a really important piece of work in sports psychology in the
Hmm.
1970s. Timothy Galloway. He wrote The Inner
Oh,
Game of Tennis. And
okay.
then later wrote The Inner Game of Golf. He wrote The Inner Game of Music, by the way. But
Yeah.
he has this concept called the easy link. It's exactly what you're talking about. It's
Oh,
like
okay.
for a golf shot, for example, um, let's say I have a difficult putt coming up.
Okay.
He says the easy link, the way you use it is you imagine doing something very easy that you can do 100% of the time. Like,
Oh,
so he would say, imagine taking your hand and lifting a golf ball out of the golf hole.
okay.
I
You can
could
do.
do that 100 times in a row. And he says, imagine that your putt that you would call a difficult putt is just like that. So
Hmm.
he's like imagining, he's linking these things. Anyway, it's super fun.
I love that because
Yeah.
success, right? Because when you're choking and when you're afraid or you're going out of pitch or you've just missed four shots and the partner looks like they want to kill you, you're petrified. And also, if you're a performer or an athlete, you're passionate already, right? You love the game. You love
Mhm.
it so much. You wouldn't be out there
Right.
for hours a day or a week. You wouldn't be a performer. So to the extent that you love it and you're already sizzling with passion is the extent that the pendulum can swing into, I'm angry, I'm the worst, I look like an idiot right
Yes.
now. Like, I'm so mad at myself. I'm performing less than my ability. We don't like to be less. Like, I want to sing beautifully all the time. I want to play great when I'm on that pickleball court. And it's not ego. I just love it. I think it's fun. I want to hit every shot. I want to
Yep.
sing and heal people and help them. I want to do a good job. I have so much energy and passion. So I also have to expect that I better be careful if that pendulum swings. So I need that positive simple command, that I love that. I love what you're saying, that I can watch the ball hit the paddle. Now, any coach on the planet would say, if you do, or I'm gonna hold this golf club, and if I really keep my eye on it to the last second and don't like get distracted, I'm probably gonna hit it great because I've been golfing for years and I know I can. That, yeah. Take the simple, and for singing, what I started to do a long time ago when I started to go into the recording studios with people and listen, I found that all the mistakes where they were out of pitch or they were ending a line too soon or they were doing something wrong was that there was no breathing. I'd say to the engineer, can you play that back for me? And I'd close my eyes and I'd listen and I'd think, they just tried to sing two full lines without breathing. No wonder that the second one, they stopped too soon and they got out of the
Hmm.
pocket and out of the rhythm. No wonder the second line, they're swallowing their voice and going out of pitch. This girl's been singing in pitch perfectly in every lesson. She's amazing. It's not about her talent. She didn't take a breath beforehand,
Mm.
so my entire practice became about having people print their lyrics or the speech they're going to go give or anything they're going to do with their voice, print it out and mark in colors where they're going to breathe. Because I'd say to people, you have a perfect pitch. You're a great singer. You have a great voice, but why do you mess up when you go sing at a writer's round in Nashville? What happens? What you know what happens to them? They stop breathing because they got distracted and nervous,
Hmm.
and then they perform far, you know,
Far
far less
below what they
below.
otherwise would be, right?
Yeah, I'm using my words, far below what they're capable of. And I said, I'm not going to accept that. And I'm not going to allow this great singer to think she's less and she's not a performer. It's one little technique that she can do. So we'd mark up the breathing, she'd practice it, and I'd say to her before she'd get on stage, can you breathe? Go like this. You can breathe, right? Let's not worry about how great you sound or if it's going to be the most emotional of performance. If you breathe line by line, you'll stay in time and you will sing in pitch the whole time. I gave her a command that she could do. It's easier than saying, I'm going to give the greatest performance. I'm going to have the greatest emotion. Then we're asking ourselves to do something so big. Just let that happen. Let all that happen. Stick with the command that you can control,
Mm,
what you can do
absolutely.
well. So
Love
when you get
that.
off the tracks, I can go back and I can take a breath. So that's maybe what you're saying he was writing about that. And I found it worked. Everything started to become more successful. And my students, they'd go into the studio and sound great the whole time because there wasn't one line that they were singing without a breath. So we didn't have to spend the first 30 minutes getting them in pitch. They already were in pitch. So it took me a while. That was a technique. So I guess that could be applied to
A hundred
sports
percent.
or to anything else. You know,
100%. And I'll say here, and I'm looking at the clock. I've done it again, Kim, with us. I've gone way over our time, and but it's always fun to dive into these topics. And I think one of the things that's so interesting is that talking with somebody who is so experienced inside of your performance domain that you teach in and coach in, and that you've been a professional in, it just helps me to synthesize and think about and conceptualize all the work that I'm doing in other domains as well. So I've been writing notes like crazy over here. I'm having a great time. So
thank you. Thank
this
you.
has been super fun. So I would love to have you back for another conversation at some point. There's so much more. I had a bunch of other questions, and
We
and
love
we'll
all
get
that.
to them.
We never
We'll
want to
get to them.
stop. Yeah, we
We
love it,
don't.
right?
We
We love it.
don't. Yeah, we don't want to stop. It's fantastic. So, Kim, I want to thank you. I did want to ask you before we leave. I'm sure there's going to be people curious about, maybe a little bit more curious about the work you do, and if they want to get in touch with you. Certainly, we'll leave a link on the podcast and let people know. But if people want to get in touch with you, they're curious about the work that you do in Nashville and outside of Nashville, how would they get in touch with you?
Maybe by my email, that would be fine.
Okay. And
Right?
you have a website too, right?
KimFranca.com, and they can, um, yeah, maybe you can leave my email there for them to contact me with any questions or interests.
100%. We'll do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank
Well,
you.
good.
Appreciate that.
Kim, fantastic. Thank you so much. This is such great content. And appreciate the energy and the great advice for
Thank
all
you.
of us. So really, really terrific. So
No, I feel very, very thankful that I've met you and very thankful that you're bringing me on your show and just, talking with you. I've learned so much from you and I admire what you are doing. You're a super positive, intelligent, passionate person putting all this positivity into the world. So I feel really
We're
fortunate to have met
trying.
you and worked with you. Thank you. Give me
Yeah.
this
Thanks, Kim.
opportunity. Yeah.
Appreciate that. All
Thanks.
right. Thanks. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining the podcast today and listening in. That was Kim Franca, shot out of a cannon. There's so much energy there. It's really incredible, and excited to hear how she thinks about performance inside of music and all of the lessons that are there for us to consider, no matter the performance domain. It could be pickleball, it could be golf, it could be giving a presentation at work. All of these concepts are there for us just to pick up and to, bring into those spaces. I love how she talked about the recovery, when things start to spin out of control a little bit. Can I revert to the most simple essence of what I'm trying to do there? I love how she talked about going in deeper and then and channeling our performance through us rather than by us. Anyway, just some great concepts, and super fun guest to have. I hope you get a chance to check out Kim's website. I will say this: I worked with Kim personally, and it's been eye-opening on so many levels. And if you're a speaker, if you are a singer, if you are presenting on a stage in any way, shape, or form, it would be worth your time exploring working with Kim. I mean, I'm telling you what, I've really enjoyed the process. So, again, appreciate you joining the podcast today. My mission, as I've mentioned before, is to help you to lead, play, and perform at your best by focusing on your inside game, not just your outside game. So if you want to learn more about the work that I do, you can visit my website at paulmonahan.com. You can find my book there. It's called The Most Important Game. If you're watching on YouTube and you enjoyed the conversation, absolutely would love for you to consider subscribing, hit the like button. If you follow on podcast, hit that follow button. And I want to thank Kevin Monahan again for being with us today to run all the production levers behind the scene. And until next time, remember, don't give up. Stay in the game. Just as Kim Franca said, right? There's a game to be played, and you got to hang in there, and you got to persevere. No matter the arena that you're performing in, it is possible to play better, struggle less, and enjoy more. See you soon.